So why are the Irish horses so dominant when it comes to the Cheltenham Festival? In today's show, we're going to debate exactly the history of why that has been happening in the last few years, as well as looking ahead to this year's edition of the Cheltenham Festival, trying to see where the English can actually come back and get some winners, and then also the looking ahead to the future of British racing up against the Irish. So we have our own matchup here. I'm kind of going to represent the English side, along with Ed Quigley and Stephen Harris. But we also have Vincent Finegan from IrishRacing.com to talk about the Irish side. So, chaps, it's a hot debate, really. I mean, if we look at the history as well, Ireland previously weren't so good, but now are coming back into dominance, really, when it comes to Cheltenham. But Vincent, take us through the history. Give us a bit of a history lesson. Why have things turned around so dramatically?
Well, first of all, when I was growing up, we rarely had a winner. That's the bottom line. We did well to get one or two a year. That was it. Some years we'd none. What I see personally looking at it is that the trend has been hugely upward graph in the last 15, 20 years. We've started to really rise. What I think is it started in the late 1990s where we started to get more than just one or two winners a year. And there's two things that may be factors here. One of them is that was the time we hit the economic boom in Ireland, the building boom, which everyone was awash with money and everything else before we had this mad crash in the mid-2000s. But that was the sign of it first. There was a lot of money floating around in Ireland, so a lot of the people were starting to buy horses. But the other factor I think definitely has influenced this is the introduction of the champion bumper in Cheltenham. That was 1992. And Ireland won that in 6 of the first 7 years. A lot of the horses that won that were real household names at the time, like Montalado, Rhythm Section, Muckle Meg, Wither or Witch, Florida Pearl, Alexander Banquet. And those horses, some of those horses are the ones that put Willie Mullins on the map in the first place. He'd 4 times in 5 years, he won that in the early stages. The Irish people then felt, look, you can have a horse and you can win a race in Cheltenham with it, because we know we're very good with bumper horses, and that's what they started to do. And it sort of spread from there. And of course, success breeds success, and the more success you have, the more you get is the bottom line with this, and that's what's happened all the way through. So Willie Mullins is a fantastic exponent of the game anyway, but he's the one that's driven this forward, and the others have caught onto his coattails. Others have benefited from it, probably Gordon Elliott to a large extent, and the Bromhead, and Jessica Harrington, whoever else has had winners over the years, and some of the smaller stables are now beginning to pitch in as well. It's very hard to see how you turn this around, but I think we'll get to a stage where there'll be a tipping point here, because all the major owners are putting the horses in Ireland and have been doing for the last 10 or so years. Your Cheveley Parks and the rest of them all putting all their eggs in the one basket, more or less. I think we're getting to a stage where this has to change. You look at some of the horses in Ireland, it's very difficult to win a maiden hurdle in Ireland at the moment, particularly, but lots of other races as well are very difficult to win. They're becoming extremely competitive. You take a horse like Kilcroot, who was second in the champion bumper in Cheltenham last year, won the champion bumper in Punchestown. Took him 3 goes to win a maiden hurdle in Ireland this season. There's a lot more like that. You've got other horses, just looking at some of the novices around at the minute. There's a horse, I think it runs today, Adamantly Chosen, the Willie Mullinses. That won a festival bumper first time out in Punchestown. So obviously a decent horse. Been beaten twice over hurdles here since. There'll come a stage where some of these top owners will say, we can't win a maiden hurdle with these horses. Certainly the ones of a slightly lower level, like you take a horse like Colonel Mustard, decent horse that the Fowlers have at the minute. It was 2 3/4 lengths off John Bond when it went over to the UK. Comes back to Ireland. There's no races for it. It has to run in a grade 1. Gets beaten 12 lengths by Sir Gerhard and 3 Stripe Life. Where does it go next? Where does even 3 Stripe Life go? That's rated 141. Fourth in the champion bumper last year, won its maiden, and has now been beaten twice in grade 1 since. There's not a lot of opportunities for those horses. So I think you get to the stage where they'll have to start going to the UK. And I think there'll be a lot of owners who'll start to think that way going on, because they want winners. Obviously they want Cheltenham winners, but they definitely want winners, and they're becoming very hard to come by in Ireland at this stage.
And Stephen, just to bring you in with your bookmaker hat on, perhaps, I mean, how much has things changed over the years? I mean, with focus being on the Great British potential winners at Cheltenham, now over to the Irish. I mean, how have things changed for you in the betting markets?
Well, 10 years ago, I mean, I've bet on horse racing since I was 18, so nearly 30 years of it. 10 years ago, I didn't watch Irish racing at all. It wasn't a factor for me. I don't bet massively on it now, but obviously the top class races with a view to Cheltenham, you do watch them now, and the standard is simply a stone plus better in almost every grade and every handicap and every The bumpers are probably 3 stone better. I think the 2 points I make, Vincent's absolutely right. Everything he says, absolutely, completely agree with him, and a very good explanation too. I think there's 2 things are a big factor. Low grade, far too much racing in the UK has diluted it. We've just got a lot of rubbish Monday to Friday, and the horses just aren't there to run. There's far too much. We race 3 or 4 meetings a day when Ireland don't have any. I mean, the last 6 weeks or so, there's hardly been any racing in Ireland because they've saved it all for the Dublin Racing Festival. A fantastic spectacle. You know, they've had 1 or 2 meetings a week in January virtually. We've still had 2, 3, 4 a day. In the middle of August, we have 2 jumps on in the afternoon, 3 runners at Worcester, 4 runners at around another kip somewhere. You know, and it's decimated it, and it's just gone completely. The other thing is, I think, is point to pointing. Ireland's got a massive culture of point to pointing, and whereas our point to points is a fun fair around the back of Guildford on a Sunday on hard ground, 5 runner races. They're all 15 years old and owned by a TV personality, and they used to be trained by Paul Nicholls in about 1980. And they're 7-1 on in a 3-runner novice hunter. In Ireland, they have young horses who are, babies basically starting off their careers in competitive, well-attended point to points, and it's a breeding ground for good jump racing. Aside of the fact that all the money's come in now, and they're buying the best horses from France as well. So it's a double whammy. Now, where, again, I agree with Vincent, is he was talking about they're going to have to start sending the runners over to milk the English races. Well, they're already doing that. But believe it or not, we haven't talked about this, but there was a festival trials day at Musselburgh at the weekend. They had about 3 runners in every race. And Gordon Elliott and another couple of Irish trainers sent over a few runners that won by a furlong each time. So, I mean, it's already happening, and Vincent's right. It's going to carry on happening. There's a complete imbalance. I mean, we're going to come on and talk about Cheltenham later on, but it gets shown up at Cheltenham. I mean, in 2021, you sort of had Nicholls and Henderson and Dan Skelton all sort of red in the face with the old binoculars looking back to the second last where their horses were while the Irish were getting weighed in, and it's going to happen again.
I mean, Ed, just to bring you in as well here, like for the spectacle, the competitiveness of Ireland against Great Britain, I mean, has it just gone completely the other way now? It's just not competitive in your view?
Well, the stats on last year would suggest that. I'm slightly of the view that I agree with a lot of what Vincent's saying. I think things in life are cyclical. 10 years ago, the Irish could get looking when masterminded big bucks and, Denman's, Corto Stars and Paul Nicholls just rolling out these winners right, left and centre. And now 10 years later, I mean, last year, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Paul Nicholls said it was the first time in 22 years he didn't have a runner on Champion Hurdle Day at the Cheltenham Festival. He went and sat and watched it in his local. I mean, bizarre scenes, really. 10 years' time from now, we could be having a totally different conversation. However, the alarming thing, I mean, I think there's lots of different nuances to this. There's probably loads of different things which all kind of chip in 10% as a reason why the Irish are leading. But I'm still of the view that, money talks. All the big hitters, all the big owners, all their horses are in Ireland. That's the bottom line of it. If you look at it, I mean, it's crazy. Even like Cheveley Parker running all their horses in Ireland. I mean, they had £560,000 on Classic Getaway. You got beat on this debut, and it was kind of, oh, wow, loose change, on to the next, that kind of... I mean, you're dealing with powerhouse owners here. You could go to any point-to-point, any sale in France, anywhere you want to go, and just mop up, blow a lot of the other bidders out of the water. You look at JP McManus still, a great supporter of the game, been in the game for decades. He's still laying out £560,000 for John Bond. No need to pay that money, but it's just to ensure we've got the horse. And all the top end, and you listen to Paul Nicholls saying, look, back in the day, you could, I can't remember the exact figure Corto Star was purchased for, but he'd already won a graded race in France, went for 100-something thousand. You'd be talking 700,000-800,000 to try and purchase Corto Star now. And a lot of the English yards, you go through them, if you took away the Irish-backed owners, you're struggling to find an owner. I mean, you don't want to snoop around and be crass, but you go on Company's House and compare the kind of net worth of some of these owners compared to the Irish counterparts, and it's absolute chalk and cheese. And I just think there comes a point where you are just dealing. It's such a financial deficit with a lot of these English owners. I mean, you're scratching your heads. The prices that some of these Irish pointers are going for in these private sales or alleged private sales is just astronomical figures, and the money is talking. And so there does come a point. I do think Vincent does raise a point where if the bar in Ireland goes so high, it then almost seems to self-defeat itself, because it has to burst at some point, and then owners start thinking, well, hang on a minute, yeah, maybe we'll start looking at England, or maybe move some of our horses to England, or blah, 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 blah. But at the moment, I think there's lots of different factors. We could be here for a 3-hour chat show. But I do think just the crude and raw finances for the big Irish owners. I mean, you mentioned Gigginsdown, of course, and they can throw whatever money they want at everything. There's just so much weight behind a lot of those horses at the sales. They're being Richie. These horses are being just snapped up for mega sums, and the English just don't get a look in. You're relying on a homebred like Coneygree to try and pull the kind of pull the joker out of the pack, aren't you? So yeah, tricky times ahead. But I wonder if we're a little bit grayer, and especially you, Joe. In 10 years' time, we've had this chat again. I wonder whether it's come full circle. And Dan Scoutton's sitting there after having 14 Cheltenham Festival winners laughing, and it'll start to U-turn again. So yeah, funny way the cyclical kind of the cycle of life, if you like.
Well, I've tried to give you a little bit of homework, guys, as well, to try and pick out some hope for the English at this year's Cheltenham Festival. So we're going to go through our day one selections of the English potential winners. Now, Stephen, I'll start with you. First one on the books here for you. Favourite of the Supreme?
Yeah, well, Nicky Henderson's a genius with novices. He always has been. He's always had top-class horses. Constitution Hill has looked an absolute monster. If the ground is soft at Cheltenham, I think he's going to take a lot of beating with the proviso. Obviously, the Willie Mullins horse, and there'll probably be 4 or 5 other Irish horses that we don't know a lot about who could be runners. If it's good ground at Cheltenham, which is quite possible, or good to soft, perhaps is even favourite, then I think John Bon is a very big runner as well. He's got loads of speed. I know some people weren't impressed by John Bon at Haydock, but I did think he got himself out of a very tricky position in very bad ground that he doesn't like. They work them at home, I think. They know how they stand at home. They think Constitution Hill's a 3-mile chaser in time who really wants testing ground, whereas John Bon is a free-going sort with a real turn of foot. So one's got more speed, one's got more stamina. If it's soft, I think Constitution Hill might take an awful lot of beating. He'll get a positive ride. He won't be stopping up the hill, that's for sure. So he's a big hope. The Supreme is a race where the English trainers have got a strong hand, or Nicky Henderson has anyway.
Now, you did mention a bit of a tricky situation. I'm going to put Vincent maybe in a tricky spot here, trying to give you an English winner. Now, Vincent, you give us your day one winner for the English side.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with Stephen. The Supreme has definitely got a chance here with the 2 Henderson horses. As I said, I've said in the previous show here, I think there's only 4 players in this, 2 from Willie Mullins, 2 from Nicky Henderson. So it's probably a toss-up at this stage, which are the better horses. They're all relatively unexposed over hurdles. But outside of that, the one race I think the UK will probably win and normally win is the Ultimate Chase. Hasn't been an Irish winner in this race since 2006. So it just goes to show, even with all our dominance, we still can't win this race. We don't tend to fire many darts at it, but the UK win it every year. A possible winner for me is I Right, 3rd in the race last year and was 3rd to Chantry House in the Cotswold Chase the last day at Cheltenham. So that's a definite contender. It'll be an open race, but I'd expect an English winner of that. That'll probably be the only English winner on the day outside of the Supreme if they happen to manage that one.
And Ed, I think you're sharing a similar view, right, for the Ultima on day one.
Quite funny. Out of all the races we could pick, and Vincent Farr's in the Ultimate. He's got a good point though. Yeah, Dundera for Tony Martin. I think my pronunciation might be wrong there, but I remember that race vividly. In 06 was the last Irish winner. Yeah, not a race the Irish tend to go for, and I think they have got a few badly handicapped 3-milers, I think. So in the end, they just kind of roll them in the in either Swerve Charlton or roll them as a novice in the what was the RSA Chase. It tends to be the case. But Corrick Rambler, really interesting type here. Lucinda Russell wouldn't normally be your kind of go-to Cheltenham Festival trainer, if you like. But this horse was a total non-stayer in the Classic Chase over 3-5 at Warwick for that. On his penultimate start, bolted up at Cheltenham over 3 miles. Novices have a cracking record in the Ultima. It's one of those races where clearly the handicapper hasn't got to them yet. They're still on an upward curve. This horse off 140, course form in the book. I think he's a serious player. Peter Scudamore, of course, assistant, was interviewed the other day. He said the horse is going straight to the race. So you go through the history of this race. I think Hollywell, Kustar, Sivela, Wichita Lineman. I think Benslam was more or less a novice. There was a couple of others as well. Novices have a very good record in this, and especially in that kind of ratings band in the 140. What you pay for terms of lack of experience, you get in terms of they probably got a few pounds in hand up their sleeve, whereas the more exposed types are kind of there for all to see. So yeah, Corrick Rambler around 16-1. I think we'll go there with a cracking shout. Downland trip to 3 miles back at Cheltenham ticks a lot of the right boxes.
All right, well, let's move on to day 2. And Stephen, I'll start with you. Maybe the easiest selection for the English, or the best horse of the English runners, Shishkin in the Champion Chase. Just take us through that, your selection there.
Yeah, he hasn't got. I think he's got a Nougamine to beat, and Shakin Poussoir maybe as well. He jumps left. I thought it was a brilliant performance at Ascot. He's got everything in his favour. He's a winner at Cheltenham before. He's versatile with regard to ground. There's more improvement to come. I think he's going to be about 6-4 on, and I think he'll take an awful lot of beating. So it's very obvious. He's probably the best chance over the whole week for English trainers. I think it does look banker material to me.
And Ed, you're looking at one in the Coral Cup, a bit of a harder race to pick traditionally. But yeah, take us through your selection here.
Yeah, just very quickly on a wider point, Joe. I mean, last year's drubbing of the English at the Cheltenham Festival, there was a lot made afterwards, especially by likes of Paul Nicholls and Dan Scouted, about subsequent impossible handicap marks they were facing. Now, at the time, a lot of people said, sour grapes, etc. But when you actually look through it with the grand benefit of hindsight, there were some horses who were turning up with ratings. They're absolutely mythology. You could almost I can't remember now the exact horse, but there was one made at the time who, on official figures, was only rated £2 lower than Bob Ollinger going into the festival, and there was about 3 stone difference in them. So I actually think the handicappers reacted the other way, and I'm of the personal view there are quite a few English horses here I think are getting in a little bit lenient this time round. Well, we shall see how it plays out at Cheltenham Festival, but that's a convoluted way of saying I'm sticking to a lot of the handicaps for the British runners this year. I actually think they'll do pretty well. And yeah, Comprond in the Coral Cup. It's a horse we haven't seen since November. I actually got no idea whether he's still got 4 legs and will be an intended runner. But if he did line up in this, I think he's a serious player off 140. It's of course a distance winner. Loves good ground. I thought it was very interesting, Joe, looking through the history books. JP McManus won this a couple of years ago with a horse called Dame de Compagnie, trained by Nicky Henderson. And this almost mirrors her kind of profile exactly, in the sense that Dame de Compagnie ran at the back end of the previous year, wasn't seen for 4 months, went straight to the Cheltenham Festival fresh to protect her mark. Comprond, if he does turn up, will be doing exactly the same thing. And they were both rated exactly 140 as well. So whatever, it's a bit of a tried and tested method discussed amongst connections. And if that horse did turn up, he's around 20-1 for Philip Hobbs. Comprond, keep him in your notebooks. I think he'd be a major player in the Coral Cup.
Great long shot shout there, Ed. Now moving on to Vincent's pick for day 2. We've got looking at the Grand Annual, Vincent.
Yeah, the first thing to say is Stephen is right. Look, Shishkin is the obvious one here from a UK point of view. I personally think Energamine will reverse the form. I think it's a furlong shorter almost. It's a 200 yards shorter. I think that's going to play totally to the strength of Energamine. I think Shishkin might just lack the turn of foot to get past this time. And it's one of my bets of the week, basically, is Energamine. So I'm not going to pick Shishkin to be a UK winner here. The race I picked is the Grand Annual. Going through the stats, the UK have a 50-50 split here in the amount of times they win this compared to the Irish. So every other year, it's one or the other. They have a good chance of winning it. What they win it with, I have no idea realistically. I've stuck up a token choice as a horse called Not That Fussy. The reason I picked this one was it was gambled on in the race last year. It's a Dan Skelton horse, back from 25s into 10s on the morning of the race, and finished 5th, I think, in it last year. He'd come into that race with a funny prep. He'd run in 2 bumpers before running in the Grand Annual and getting gambled on. Looking at his prep this year, it's also pretty funny. He's after running 2 hunter chases, so maybe he doesn't run in the Grand Annual, but at the same time, maybe they're just trying to pull the wool over the eyes with him, and he could well be a gamble in it again this year, so he might be one just looking at a very big price.
Great stuff. All right, so we're going to move on now to day 3, where 2 of our experts are going for a win in the Stayers Hurdle. Stephen, I'll start with you and your pick.
Yeah, I mean, the Stayers Hurdle until last year was a race that the English did okay in, to be honest. We also had Big Bucks used to win it, English Drever. That's been some really good winners. I'd like Sporting John here. He's only sort of been winning handicaps. He was very impressive at Warwick the other day. He was a winner at Cheltenham earlier in the season, then disappointed at a short price in a handicap. Again, a bit of snobbery against handicaps, but I don't think there's a great deal between the top handicappers and the graded horses over this kind of trip. And Sporting John has got less convictions than some of these other rivals. I think Champ's a big runner if they go this route, which does seem likely, in the same colours. So maybe they won't run both of them. But I thought Sporting John was the value anyway, 14-1. to be an English winner in this race.
And Ed, now it's a chance for you to wax lyrical once again about Thomas Darby.
Yeah, I'm a loyal individual here, Joe. But yeah, we rewind. You might as well just play the show out from last October, basically, where he was 66 to 1. Now he's a 25 to 1 poke, and he heads straight to the Stayers Hurdle, according to Ollie Murphy. And now I'm just taking the view the Stayers Hurdle. Everyone just keeps beating everyone this season. I think it's incredibly wide open, this race. I mean, to sum it up, your first two in the market are Florian Porter and Time Hill. They haven't won a race all season. I mean, yeah, okay, Florian Porter's favourite on default, but I think this is rife for a turn-up. And this race in recent years, there's been absolute carnage in this. Cole Harden won it at a big price. Liz de Gault Oscar won it in 50 to 1. I was going through it the other night. There was all kinds of, I mean, even Florian Porter himself was a double-figure price last season. There can be absolute, bonkers stuff going on in this contest. I think a lot of horses do get overbet. And Thomas Darby, he blows hot and cold, but he's got winning Cheltenham form. Everyone's waxing lyrical about Paisley Park after his comeback, and rightly so. But people seem very short memories here, forgetting Thomas Darby absolutely wiped the floor with Paisley Park at Newbury back in November. Look, Thomas Darby, he's either on it or he's not. You're getting 25 to 1 to find out. If the Thomas Darby that ran at Newbury turns up, as I said, he's right in the mix here in a race where you could kind of pick a hole in pretty much everything, I think. And I think he's a big player.
And Vincent, you've got a selection for us in the Kim Muir for the English trainers. Yeah,
the first thing to say, just around what the guys are saying about the Stayers Hurdle, definitely it's wide open. There's no doubt about that. And there are a lot of UK contenders for this. I'd said previously, I thought the Classical Dream Flooring Porter race at Christmas, I thought they went mad in that, and it would have a mark on them. You can see the Classical Dream has already come out and flopped. I'd be surprised if Flooring Porter doesn't do something similar, to be honest with you. I just think they just went too hard, too fast for too long in that race in Leopardstown, and it definitely has to take something out of them. So I'd be against Flooring Porter. I can definitely see an English winner here, but there's a lot of Irish contenders as well. One I thought at a price, definitely don't disregard this, is Sire de Burley. He's a Cheltenham specialist. It's only one race a year, and he will run in that race. So I thought at double figure odds, he's definitely worth an interest. But outside of that, the race I picked here was the Kim Muir. Again, it's another race on stats that the UK horses do pretty well in. It's about a 50-50 split between them and the Irish in this. And a horse I liked in it is Kerry Lee's Storm Control. 5th in the race last year, but a much improved performer this year. Has been running very well. Was amateur ridden the last day, which is interesting as well, considering this is an amateur rider's race. So looks like a horse that's going for it. It's about a 16 or 18 to 1 chance. You could do worse than have something each way in it, perhaps, but we still haven't seen entries, so let's wait till we get a bit nearer the time.
Yeah, of course. Now we will go more in-depth for our anti-post previews. This is purely just for the English hopes, trying to big up some English hopes. So now we'll move on to day 4. And Ed, I'll start with you and your selection, please.
Yeah, again, sticking to back to the handicap route here, and there's a horse who's long been on the radar, and that is West Cork in the County Hurdle, trained by Dan Skelton. Dan Skelton has a remarkable record in this contest, given he's still relatively in the embryonic stage of his training career. Of course, he won this from Mohayed, was it Chitabello won it, Superb Story. He often hits the crossbar. I mean, he either wins or hits the crossbar. Third time lucky was smashed 25s into 5 to 1, whatever last year. The ground went against him. He still ran okay in defeat. This West Cork fits that perfect profile for him. Of course, won the Greatwood Hurdle back in November, only bumped up a few pounds on the back of that. Went to Ascot, had a slight overreach, came back lame after that, and they've decided to send him there fresh. If you look at the history of the Dan Skelton County Hurdle winners, they've all gone there without having to run in the calendar year, bubble wrap them, protect their mark for the festival. He's got course form. I think he's a rock solid major player there. Yeah, I'll be shocked if West Cork, regardless of what the Irish send over, I'd be amazed if he wasn't in the mix come the day. I think he's a cracking each way bet still. West Cork for me in the County Hurdle.
And good stuff. And Stephen, you're picking out the Albert Bartlett for your selection here for the UK trainers.
Yeah, and not with massive confidence, but I do like Hillcrest as a horse. Henry Daly's got some lovely young horses this year. He's a giant chasing type. He's got winning course form. He got rid of his jockey early at the second hurdle when Fire War on the other day. That you can ignore that, but he's got loads of potential. If it becomes a slog in testing ground, it'll really suit Hillcrest. He wants at least 3 miles. He's going to be a lovely chaser probably next season. Maybe this sort of race might not be ideal. I mean, Hollow Games, Ginto, there's lots of Irish runners who could be a grade or 2 above, but Hillcrest is around 20 to 1. I think he is going to run in the race by the sound of things. I think he'll give you a good run for your money if he gets there.
And Vincent, just to wrap up day 4, your selection that could be helping the English trainers on day 4.
I was going to pick the Gold Cup, but then I realised they wanted a runner in it.
Oh, come on.
So the race I've gone for is the least race of the whole festival, probably the Hunter Chase. The main reason for this is if you look at the betting on it, you've got a horse called Billaway of Willie Mullins as favourite. The horse is no good. We've seen it time and time again. It's been running in Cheltenham. It's running in Aintree. It keeps getting beaten. I think it runs in Ireland this weekend as well. It's no star. So if that's favourite, there has to be something that can beat it. The English have a very good record in this. Won it with Porlock Boy last year. Was at Hazel Hill. Pasher de Polder won it twice recently. I thought maybe Paul Nicholls has a horse here. Funny thing is, I can't find this in the betting, which I'm really surprised with. It's a horse called Cat Tiger that David Maxwell owns and rides. Is qualified for the Hunter Chase. No reason why it wouldn't run. One last time out. Nicholls, as I say, has a very good record in it. It could possibly be Nicholls' only winner of the festival if he pops up again in this race, which he's happened to do in the last few years. To be honest with you, this is not a race that I don't think anyone would be jumping up and down for winning. Realistically, it's one of the minor races of the festival, but it's probably an English win.
Now, also, we did task you guys with actually picking the number of English winners, so we want to bring up the graphic now. Ed, I think you might be a little bit biased, but yeah, just take us through why you've gone for so many English winners this time around.
Well, we're still getting an 1810 drubbing. When you go back to the days of Edredon Bleu, I think it was. I don't think the Irish had a winner. It was only 2 decades ago. I think, I was going through all the markets looking at them. I don't think 2 out of the 7 races each day is impossible, especially when you look on day 1. I think we've got major chances in the 2 handicaps. The Supreme, you could have 3 winners on the first day. Shishkin. I think on an average, I think we're going to get 2 a day, and then splattering in the unknown handicaps. As I said, I think there's a few well handicapped sorts in there. So I don't think 10, losing 18-10, the kind of the moral victory in defeat, shall we say, Joe? I think that could easily be achieved.
I think we've talked through, Vincent and Stephen, you're not so optimistic for the English's chances. But anyway, that kind of, ideally we'd have a competition. It would make for a nice betting angle, actually, the Prestbury Cup. But of course, Ireland are 1-9 to win that. So not a great deal in interest from a betting point of view here.
You're kind of pricing it, Joe. I was going to say.
Oh, exactly, yeah. At least I can get on with that. But no, guys, so let's just talk quickly a little bit about what do the English trainers have to do in the future just to change this dominance? I mean, is there anything they can do, or is it down to what Stephen said, just the structure of racing?
Well, I mean, the one thing they need to get an owner like Rishi to base themselves in the UK. Really, that would be a very good start. But I don't think we have got the structure for it. I mean, I slightly disagree with Ed. Unusually, I don't think this will go full circle. I think it's gone. I mean, there's lots of headwinds coming against UK racing in the next year or two, not least of all affordability checks and how much levy there's going to be. So unless they get that sorted out, it definitely won't be turning around anytime soon. The Irish racing is extremely competitive, as Vincent said, and maybe you will see more and more Irish runners coming over sort of pot hunting, but I'm not sure how that helps UK racing particularly. So no, it's very difficult. I mean, you do need a sort of Manchester City style billionaire to come over and buy 100 horses off Rishi and give them to Nicky Henderson or Dan Skelton, really. But I can't see that happening anytime soon.
Just a wider point as well, perhaps. I mean, just with the increase in the standard of racing in Ireland, do you think there's going to be a bit more of an interest from the English side to go over to, say, a Punchestown, Leopardstown, to go and actually watch these racing, as much as the migration is the other way, of course, to Cheltenham? And I see you shaking your head, so let's get your view on that.
Well, if you're going to use the Dublin Racing Festival as a microcosm, your answer would be no, wouldn't it? I mean, I remember when the press release for the Dublin Racing Festival a couple of years ago came out, it was one of the lines in the paragraph was, we're really hoping to attract English runners, great prizes, great prize money. Well, we've sent a splattering of horses over, and so far they've been dropping out the back of the television, haven't they? So I don't see a great incentive. It also is, if you look at like what incentive do you have really to go over there and face really good caliber of opposition, get your ass handed to you and come back on the ferry? To what avail, really? So I don't really see the need to do it. Personally, I just think it's English racing or UK racing needs to probably concentrate on its own product first and try to build that back up. And as I said, it's a very tricky one. Lots of different factors going on here, but essentially the Irish yards, the Irish stables are backed by absolute powerhouse owners who continue just to mop up all the big horses, important horses, all the sales and the private sales and the point to points. And I know it's for almost layman terms, and there is more to it than that. But you look at some of these astronomical figures these horses are changing hands for. What hope have some of these yards got over here? Now, of course, money doesn't always buy you success, but in the horse racing world, and the evidence on the track at the moment suggests it's buying a fair share of it, doesn't it? So it's tricky. I don't see a lot of English horses going to Ireland personally at the moment, unless, as we've all kind of discussed, disagree to a point, things start to change, go full circle, go cyclical, and everything becomes so competitive in Ireland. Maybe some owners think, well, maybe we'll base our sales over in England and then have horses with English trainers. And yeah, it's a tricky old situation. But in answer to your question, I don't see a logical reason as to why lots of English trainers would attack the Irish racing at the moment, given that high quality and standard of it.
Well, the one thing I was actually thinking about was just for the spectators, actually. So a lot of people go over to, I mean, I've been myself, obviously, to Leopardstown, to Punchestown for a weekend away. Do you think that might be increased if the profile of the Dublin Racing Festival is even further increased by the standard of racing? Could there be more even migration over to Ireland rather than going to Cheltenham all the time?
Oh, absolutely. In a spectator sense, I mean, it's one of those I've been itching to do, but with COVID restrictions and God knows what, I've not had the opportunity to do so. But yeah, I mean, actually, I could see in the bubble that is Twitter and social media, stacks of UK fans getting on the plane to go over and watch. Yeah, naturally. I've got no qualms with that from a spectator and enjoyment point of view. It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I watched every race of the Dublin Racing Festival on my television set. Fantastic. Yeah, as a product. As a spectator view, it's brilliant, but it's just like if all things in racing at the moment, feels like the UK is being left behind, and naturally you're going to go where the best product is. If you're a spectator, you're going to want to watch the best racing, and the fact is, it is in Ireland at the moment, and whether that continues or not, again, but we haven't all got a crystal ball, but yeah, time will tell.
And Vincent, just for some closing remarks from you as well, being the only Irish man, how good does it feel to be kind of in that dominant place right now?
It's amazing for us because we were so downtrodden for so long that we're going a bit cock a hoop with it now, and we're expecting more and more. To be honest with you, it's hard to know. I'd say the expectation over here in Ireland at the minute is that we will win nearly every race this year. That isn't going to happen in real terms. You look at it last year, the UK horses won 5 races. Okay, disaster for them. But there were 8 other races where they were second. You take it that if they even won half of them, you're talking about nearly being in double figures here. I don't think it'll be as bad this year as it was last year. I think the UK will bounce back with a couple more winners than they had. They've obviously got serious contenders in a couple of major races, but in a lot of the lesser races, I'm sure they'll pop up with a few winners here and there. And Ed could be right about the handicap system. The English handicapper has been trying to crucify the Irish for the last 10 years, all the Tony Martins and Charles Burns of the world, but it hasn't worked. But maybe they've lessened their own lot this time rather than keep increasing their ones, which hadn't worked. So be interesting to see. It's going to be great to watch. I'd imagine the Irish will win the vast majority. All the major races most of the major races should go to Ireland again. One thing just on a broader look at it is you'd wonder why Cheltenham is even in Cheltenham. Like all the horses that are going to be contenders are all in Ireland. Why are they all traveling over to Cheltenham? Why is Cheltenham making all this money? I was looking at it there the other day. You're talking 100 million to the local economy. It's worth to Cheltenham. Like, this is big business stuff here, between TV, between bookmakers, between everything. There's a fortune in this. So why are we giving it away if we've got all the dominance now? Maybe we should keep it at home. But then again, it's a tradition more than anything else, I suppose, is the bottom line with it.
Absolutely. I think that's a nice way to sum it up. Obviously, Cheltenham is something to look forward to, whichever side of the fence you are on. I think that wraps it up for our debate. But let us know in the comments below what your opinion is on the Irish and the UK divide. How will it change anytime soon? Will it? But let us know. And of course, subscribe to the Irish Racing YouTube channel for more great content coming very soon.